With that idea in mind, I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2023 MRSPA Legislative Workshop. We have quite an agenda ahead of us, and I would like to get started by welcoming many people from across the state. I understand that we have representatives from 23 of 24 of our locals, and I'd like to start by recognizing the presidents and officers of the locals. If you are a president or an officer from a local association, would you wave to us, please? There they are. Okay, thank you. We also have some legislative chairs and committee members from legislative committees across the state. If you all would raise your hands. You do such a good job within your locals promoting our legislative priorities. Thank you. And I know that there are many members of the MRSPA Board of Directors with us today. So if you would all raise your hands. And I notice some hands are going up more than once. Congratulations and thank you. And I would particularly like to recognize the MRSPA Legislative Committee. It is the largest of our committees, and I think that speaks to the fact that all of our members are interested in being represented in the legislative process. And so I'd like to particularly recognize the Legislative Committee of the MRSPA, if you would raise your hands. And then particularly our chair, Fred Evans. He is a retired high school principal from Montgomery County, and he's still active with a truancy prevention program. And I want to congratulate him on those efforts. And then we have our MRSPA legislative aide, Virginia Crespo, who is a retired social studies teacher from Anne Arundel County. I had the honor and privilege of working with Virginia last few years that I taught. And she also has been very active legislatively with the United Seniors of Maryland, as well as our local, the Anne Arundel Retired School Personnel Association. So I want to thank our state committee and Fred and Virginia, and of course, Wanda and her staff for pulling all of this together for us today. Now, we have our agenda in front of us, but we're going to switch the agenda around just a little bit. We're going to ask our Lieutenant Governor to speak first. And so I would like to introduce her, and I have a short introduction, and I will read that for you now. Aruna Miller is the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland. On January 18th, 2023, she was sworn into office as Maryland's 10th Lieutenant Governor, the second woman to serve in that role, and the first woman of color and immigrant elected to statewide office in Maryland. Born in Andhra Pradesh, India, Lieutenant Governor Miller and her family immigrated to the United States when she was 7 years old. The daughter of a mechanical engineer, she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering from the Missouri University of Science and Technology. Lieutenant Governor Miller has devoted her life to public service and removing systemic barriers to opportunity. As a civil and transportation engineer in Montgomery County's Department of Transportation, Lieutenant Governor Miller worked to improve the safety of the public and alleviate traffic by creating equitable access to transportation throughout the county. For 25 years, she oversaw programs that advanced access to schools and employment centers and made community facilities safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, and people with differing abilities. From 2010 to 2018, she represented District 15 in the Maryland House of Delegates, where she worked with her constituents to create legislation to invest in STEM education, streamline the regulatory process for small businesses, and was a champion for working families, survivors of domestic abuse, and the environment. Lieutenant Governor Miller served on the Ways and Means Committee and its Revenue, Transportation, and Education subcommittees. Additionally, in her second term, she served in the Appropriations Committee, where she served as chair of the Oversight of Personnel Subcommittee, vice chair of the Transportation and Environment Subcommittee, and vice chair of the Capital Budget Subcommittee. For over 30 years, Lieutenant Governor Miller has lived in Montgomery County with her husband, David, where they raised 3 daughters. And so I give you the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, Aruna Miller.
My goodness, thank you so much, Madam President. That is one long bio. I think we're going to shorten that up, or pretty soon I'm going to be retired by the time we get through that bio. So thank you. Thank you all for your patience and sitting through that. But I cannot tell you how excited that I am to be joining you this morning. And my deep apologies, as I said earlier, I'm commuting between events, but I didn't want to give up this opportunity to speak to those who have touched every single person in this country to where they are today. So even if it meant that I was going to be in a shaky car while speaking with you, I didn't want to pass up this opportunity. So again, Madam President, thank you for your leadership. I want to give a great big shout out to my friend, Fred Evans, whom I've known for over 15 years. And probably longer if I went to Montgomery County Public Schools, but I didn't. So I just want to say how much every student that's went through Gaithersburg High School is so deeply appreciative of everything that he's done and everyone that he has come across. Really appreciate his friendship and leadership. And to Wanda, Twigg, for coordinating with my office to make sure that I would be here this morning. And finally, thank you to every one of the members of the Maryland Retired School Personnel Association for your services. Thank you for devoting your career to educate, motivate, inspire, and nurture our students. And I truly appreciate your continuing engagement to what happens in the state of Maryland, to not only yourselves as retirees, but I know you deeply care about every student that continues to go through our public school system. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to be engaged with the state of Maryland as you do. So again, I think that bio was quite lengthy, but I do want to share a personal story with you about coming to this country. And I actually shared this at the inauguration. And it really had a very profound moment, impact on my life. So when I came to this country as a 7-year-old from India, I didn't know a word of English. And I remember walking into my first day of class in Poughkeepsie, New York, walked in, none of the kids looked like me. And of course, I couldn't communicate with them. But like any young child or any person, you want to fit in and you want to belong. So I thought, where's the best opportunity to do that? Of course, at the gathering place of food in the cafeteria, right? So I sat right next to my classmates at the cafeteria table. And I said, okay, I'm going to do everything that they're doing because that's the best way to fit in. So I ate American food for the first time. I drank cold milk for the first time in my life. And I was feeling really good. I'm like, okay, I won over my classmates. They're going to be my best friends now. Walked proudly back to the classroom, sat down, and proceeded to vomit all over my desk, right? So my teacher had to call my mom. My mom came to pick me up, and I am mortified. I'm crying to my mom, and I'm telling her, I don't want to stay in this country anymore. I want to go back to grandma who raised me, and I hate cold milk. Mom, don't ever give it to me, right? So we get home, and feeling really down. By the end of the day, I hear a knock at the door. I open the door, and out is one of my classmates, and she's got a sack full of paintings that all the kids in the classroom had made for me. Sad with tears coming down. And it took that moment to make me realize that I belonged in this country. It was a simple gesture that the educator in the classroom had, told the students to do for me. And that simple gesture of having empathy and compassion for others when they're in a difficult moment in their life is what has guided me in everything that I do in my life right now. And I believe it's compassion and empathy that are one of the most important qualities of a human being, and especially if you have the great privilege of serving in a leadership role. And so it took that educator in the classroom to be my North Star in everything that I do. And I'm so grateful for what she did and every educator since then. And all along, all my teachers told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be, and I believe them. And so, the rest is history, as they say. I've spent most of my life trying to fit into a space that didn't look like me. But ultimately, I learned it's not about people looking like me. It's about always being my authentic self in any space that I'm in. And I think that's what educators teach to all our students. So that's my personal story. Maybe not as good as the president's bio that she gave, but I wanted to share that with you and how you've touched my life and continue to do so. And my 3 kids graduated from Montgomery County Public Schools. And I want to say I am a proud mom of a public school teacher. My oldest teaches in New York City Public Schools. And so I know how important it is, how we support our teachers and our retirees. I have my mom who lives at our home. Believe me, she gives me an earful every single day what we need to do to support our retirees. So I get it from all different angles. So just want you to know, you all are covered in the Miller household. All bases are covered. I hear the importance of teachers and retirees. And of course, in the Moore Miller administration, it is a priority for us. I am so grateful to be to be here with Governor Wes Moore, to be able to represent the state of Maryland. And we believe, and we've always said this, that those closest to the challenge are closest to the solution. And that's why I am proud to be here. I don't want to be talking at you. What I'd like to hear more is about the issues that are most important to you and what we can do together as we partnered about being able to address the concerns that you have. So again, thank you for having me. And I hope you'll invite me back in the future again.
Thank you so much for being with us and for your words and for sharing your story with us. It meant so much to us. Fred, would you like to have any parting words for the Lieutenant Governor?
I just want to give her, excuse me, a big thanks. And Aruna has always been a committed citizen and as also a legislator in Montgomery County. And I'm just really glad she's sitting in the seat of Lieutenant Governor and looking forward to working with her and Governor Moore as we move forward in this state. So thank you again, Aruna.
Of course.
Thank you again for joining us today, and we will be in touch. We again appreciate your concern for us, and we're happy that you are Lieutenant Governor now, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And once again, Fred Evans has got all my contact information. He knows where I live. He knows my cell number. He knows my email. So he knows how to get a hold of me. And I look forward to our continuing engagement. Again, thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, I'm quite happy that we were able to begin our legislative workshop today with some words from our Lieutenant Governor. That certainly was inspiring. Our next speaker is from the State Retirement and Pension System. Martin Noven, the Executive Director, is going to give us an update on the pension system. We always look forward to this report every year. Now, Lana, is Martin Noven with us?
Yes, I'm right here. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Hello there. Welcome.
Hello.
Again, Martin Noven from the State Retirement and Pension System. Now, Mr. Noven, would you like to have questions during your presentation or after?
During would be fantastic. The more
Would be
conversation, the better.
okay. So you all remember to unmute yourselves when you have a question. Okay. Okay. Thank you very, very much, Mr. Noven.
Of course. Thank you. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I'm I need to go to gallery. I don't need to see just one big picture of my face, so I had to readjust that. So thank you. That was a hard act to follow. I do feel the need to mention that I too am a product of the public school system. I went to all public schools up and through even undergraduate and law school, because I understood the great value that they provide. And when I moved to Maryland, the reason why we moved to Maryland was we needed to move because we didn't have a good public school for our children where we were living in Champaign, Illinois. They were great up until we got to middle school, and the middle schools really weren't at the same level as what we needed for our children. We tried private schools, and they don't provide the same type of education. They don't provide the same environment. And so Maryland, with their fantastic public schools, is what really, that's the reason why I'm here, not California. If you have to know the truth, that was another opportunity that I pursued at the same time. So my family is very happy with the school system. My kids are thriving in a school system that really gives them everything they need, and we feel very grateful for all that. So thank you. I should have mentioned that last time I was here, but we're even more grateful now than a year ago. I've been here almost 2 years, so it's starting to feel, everything settling in very well for the family, and the schools are such a huge part of that. So in terms of the system, giving an update, we do have a new chairman. Treasurer Davis is the new chairman following Comptroller Francho's retirement, I guess you'd call it. And Comptroller Learman now is the vice chair of the board. And I had the opportunity, we've been working with Comptroller Learman as a legislator for a number of years on the Joint Committee of Pensions. So we know her well, and she'll be fantastic. And Treasurer Davis, we're really enjoying getting to know better. He's been with us for about 1.5 years now, and now has moved from vice chair into the chairman role. And yesterday we got to meet in person Secretary Grady, is Governor Moore's budget secretary, who also serves on our board. I think she's going to be fantastic as well. So I think the board is really shaping up well. We'll have some other folks, we always have people rolling through the process. It's a good process, but we have a good board that works well together. And I think the changes in all our ex officio slots will, make us stronger. The system is very strong. I used to, thank you for doing this, by the way, in the morning as opposed to the afternoon. I used to do these in Illinois. It was always in the afternoon. And once I told people how well the system was doing, sometimes people started dozing off after lunch once they heard what they cared about, and they weren't as excited about the rest of my presentation. So the mornings are certainly better for some of this dense talk, but I'll try to keep it a little bit light. The system is doing very well. It's very strong. So we've got a plan, as I'm sure you all know, to be fully funded by 2039. That will happen. But the real goal is not to make sure that happens, because we're on track to make it happen. We make sure that we make it happen. The contribution rates are based on a formula that makes sure it happens. The real key, what we really look at, is how do we do that while keeping contributions stable and flat, so that we don't have people having crazy ideas about cutting benefits or doing other things to make the numbers work. If we can run our system in a way that keeps the contributions from employers even-ish, right? The spikes in contributions that really hurts pension funds, because that's when people start talking about, well, wait, we can't afford this, we need to do something. And that's when you start going into tracking the people who are anti-pension plans. And we've done this in a lot of ways. One thing that we did, I talked about it last year, was lowering the assumed rate of return. We had record returns 2 years ago. Very proud of that, and we did a great job. We're excited about that. But the idea was not to then lower the employer contributions. So then we had to raise them the next year. Plus, then when you have a year like this last year where the markets didn't do as well, we would have then had to increase contributions this year. So we try to avoid that. And one thing is having a good assumed rate of return that's reasonable and low enough that we can meet it, so we're not having that volatility in terms of payments made by the employers. The other thing that they do in Maryland, and I'm sure many of you are aware of that, and it's a fantastic practice, is to smooth the returns, the investment returns. So we smooth those over 5 years. And so then that really mitigates the fluctuation and stops the contributions going up and down, which causes that kind of chaos and public policy concerns that come with raising costs on employers. And with those the way that 5-year tracks, 2 years ago, we earned 26.7%, right? It was a record return for the system, and we're very proud of that. We're actually even more proud of what we were able to do this last year. This last year, we were able to, now we lost 2.97% this year. But when our peers on average lost 9%, and a 60-40 plan would have lost 15%, it really shows that we're adding the value we say we're adding. So, I've interviewed a lot of money managers in my time in pensions, and they all tell you, yeah, we're only, we're middle of the pack now, but you should wait until things go south and the markets go down. We're the ones who are going to protect you. Hedge fund providers love to tell you that. And in my experience, most of the time when markets change, those glorious things don't happen. And you wonder, can anyone really beat the market? Just because you're getting your share going when markets go up, what do you really do when markets go down? Can you still hold your own? And so we grabbed every bit when markets went up. Our staff was able to be right at median. We grabbed all the benefits that all the other systems got on average, right, in an up market. But we did so in a portfolio that was a lot less risky than others had to obtain the same objectives. And we told everyone until the General Assembly for the last few years, yeah, but you just wait to see when markets go down, sounding a little like a money manager, we're really going to show you the benefits of our risk-adjusted approach to make sure we're not going to have a huge loss like we had before that causes huge amounts of underfunded. And our system really stood up to what we said it would do. The asset allocation and the implementation by the investment staff did exactly what it's supposed to do. So they don't like talking much and bragging about what happened this year because we lost 2.7% or 2.97%. What I keep trying to tell them is this is a better year than last year in terms of what we've been able to accomplish as a pension system, the value that we're able to add. It just is a number of the wrong direction, but those years come, and that's when it's really important to show that we know what we're doing and what we're doing works. So I think it's a great year. It's great news. I hope everyone can feel more comfortable knowing how well that is. And frankly, with that asset smoothing I mentioned earlier, the excess returns from 2 years ago are smoothed over 5 years, and those modest losses are smoothed over 5 years as well. So if you look at the good year, and then the good year in terms of the record returns, and this year, which I also would say is arguably a better year, but where we did lose some money, you average both of those, and we don't have any variation. There's no additional contribution that need to be made because they offset each other. So the record year and the controlling the volatility year, actually, if you net those out, we're a little bit ahead of where we should be. So that's all very good. So everything's stable. The system is sound. We're still on track without raising employer contributions to get to fully funded status by 2039. Then the other thing we're doing to make sure that we stay on track, and we've been talking to the Joint Committee on Pensions with this, is an amortization plan. So right now we have an amortization plan where we simply amortize everything over to 2039. So if, let's say, we get some demographic information, interest rates, for example, any shock to the system like that, or a particularly bad year in terms of returns, that would all be amortized from now into 2039 when we should be 100% funded. And that works very well when you've got time like we do now. But if we got to a point where, let's say, we're in 2037 and we had a big market correction, there wouldn't be time without spiking employer contributions and causing all sorts of chaos to get things back on track by 2039. So the new amortization schedule, I don't want to get into all these details, and I know this information can be done, but the new amortization schedule would protect against by smoothing out any shocks in those later years, which would knock us off track potentially in terms of our funded status. So we're working on all these things. They're certainly not normal dinner conversation, but they're very important. And the tagline and the summary is that we're really doing very well. System's doing well. The investment team's doing phenomenally. We've got a good solid board that works well together. And so all is well. The one thing that we could do better, and we're working on and making it very much more a focus than we have before, is member services. So in the past, the way the agency's worked, it's been a good agency, a strong agency. We've got great staff. And when people do surveys about how is their experience with our call center or the customer service, the member services folks, the surveys are all very high. They love the service they're getting when they call. The problem is they shouldn't have to wait as long on hold when they call. We shouldn't have as many people giving up and hanging up and abandoning the calls. We simply haven't had the staff we've needed to provide the level of service that we need to. And not only that, is we're really playing more defense than offense. So we're acting more like, motor vehicle services when you get your driver's license. We provide the retirement benefits, we provide you your services, we get you everything you need, but we're not the one-stop shop for your trusted resource for retirement. So we don't spend, there's been research that shows the best time to talk to someone about the adequacy of the retirement is 49 years old. That's when people are old enough to care. They're not coming into school when they don't, right to a new job right out of school when they don't know they should care. But if you wait until people get right to retirement or too close to retirement within 5 years, they don't have time to correct any and fill any retirement readiness gap because we haven't talked to them. People also get scared as they get closer to retirement. And frankly, our brains aren't, I'm saying us because I'm a good portion past 49 at this point, and our brains aren't as good as they are at 49. There's actually science to back that up too. So we need to start being more proactive. We need to start reaching out to our members at 49 and make sure that we're engaging them with the system and with their own retirement so we can do so before it's too late. The reforms that happened in 2011 reduced benefits. I understand we had to do that to shore up the system, but that's going to impact more teachers who are going to need to make sure that they have what they need to retire with dignity. And if we don't let them know where they are and we're just waiting for the people who will come to us and try to figure out what happened on our website, which is a fantastic website, but not everyone's going to access the website. So we do need to be more proactive in our member services, and that's a top goal of ours as we're moving forward. I will say that we're, I'm not knocking on wood, but it does look like we're in pretty good shape to get 4 more staff members in our member services, which is a pretty good, in government, it's always good to get new positions. It's always hard, but to get 4 will really have a substantial impact and start us on that path of better customer service. I saw a couple things in the chat. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing something. Where is it? If a member chooses to leave before they are vested, do they get back the money they have put in? Yes, they do. The problem is that that's all they get. And, I've seen studies and that say that, the average teacher can only stays for 5 years in their job. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's something that I've heard bantered around. We have a vesting term that's 10 years. So if I'm doing the math, that tells me that we're missing the majority of teachers. And there are teachers in some other systems who have better reciprocal arrangements, right? So it's not just that 10-year vesting is simply too long, the vesting period, but it's also the problem is that, if a teacher wants to become lieutenant governor, for example, or do some other thing in the state, some of those reciprocity arrangements do not work as well, or they're not as generous here as they are in some other states, like Illinois, for example, where I came from, where I was able to combine my service in a much more easy way and use my final average salary and my years of service and combine them all seamlessly. So I was talking to the we've been running around talking to the new legislators and the new senators and the new pension committees that are right on the House and Senate side. And everyone is talking about member benefits a little bit now. And we're trying to prompt that along because in 2011, everyone was concerned because everyone was underfunded, right? Everyone was trying to figure out how do we keep these pension systems alive and keep all the people who say they can't work at bay, and how can we make these tough choices and just make sure that we're keeping these pensions around for all of our benefit. And that's absolutely what we needed to do back then. And Maryland wasn't like other states. Every state that could do so, was able to come to some sort of terms and figure out a way to shore up their systems. And that's why we're in such good shape right now. But what they didn't do is no one was talking about, well, what does that do to the adequacy of benefits? You can pull a lever on vesting, you could pull a lever on contribution rates, you can pull a lever on all these different things and see if the math works, and then the state can afford to pay what they want to pay towards pensions. But pensions weren't established to make sure the state could reach a budget, right? Pensions were established to make sure people had an adequate retirement benefit. And we did that analysis, as far as I can tell, has not been performed since 2011 when those reforms were done. Is wait a second, what did we do to our benefits? What did we do to the adequacy of the retirement plan that is here for those purposes? So I can tell you we're excited that Governor Moore is talking about teachers and benefits and how we need to make sure those are right. And I can tell you that when we talked with both the Senate and the House this year to introduce ourselves, and we were, we can't advocate for benefits. That's what you're here for. We have to be a little more objective. But what we can tell you is that some of these benefits and the way they're structured might not be the best way to provide the benefits you're seeking. Before I went into the pension world and I was at TIAA, I focused on pension plan design for 10 years in the private sector. And we used to talk to plan sponsors like me to kind of help them figure out what happens if you move this lever, this lever versus another one. What are the best practices? So I am excited. I think there'll be hopefully a study in the Senate at the very least, because we've had that discussion where we talk about these different factors and how do we make sure that everyone gets a benefit that's appropriate and going to attract teachers, but also let them then, when they leave service, retire with dignity. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have some good news on that front. The last thing I was going to mention is ESG, because I'm sure folks have heard a lot about it. It's a big discussion. It's become kind of a mainstream policy issue that's being discussed. Apparently last week 25 attorneys general in different states sued. I forget who they sued, probably the Department of Labor, about ESG rules and regulations, and should people be doing anything on environmental, social, or governance issues, right? So there's plenty of people who think we should, everyone should divest from all fossil fuels. And there's, in Texas, they're boycotting any company that supports divesting from fossil fuels, right? So there's a lot of these. It's becoming a political battle. It also, when you're looking at diversity and hiring diverse managers, women-owned firms and minority firms, you find a similar debate across the political spectrum. So we feel very strongly that we don't want to be part of any of that debate, right? We're not here to participate in the political system in that way. What we're here for is to earn the highest rate of return we can for our members. Now, we do realize, however, though, to do that, to earn the highest rate of return, we can't pretend climate change doesn't exist. We can't pretend that investing, in coastal, a coastal apartment building is not going to be risky and is as good of an investment as it was before we saw climate change. So you can't deny that these factors exist, and you have to acknowledge these factors exist. And so we worked with the General Assembly last year to pass a climate bill that we thought was a good one. It really codified what we did. What we do on climate, we don't structure our investments to save the Chesapeake. What we do is we structure our investments a way to make sure that we're not making bad investments that are going to lose money because they're at risk because of climate change. And that ends up helping the portfolio and the Chesapeake. So we do it for the right reasons, which have to be as trustees for our members. But there are collateral benefits to doing the right thing as an investor. And as long as that is handled correctly, you don't have to get into this debate that you're seeing across the nation where, the Republicans are anti-considering these things and denying they exist, and the Democrats are, promoting that, we take measures that could actually hurt our ability to fund the pension. So we feel like we're in a real good place where we are doing the right thing for our members and their members' fiscal and financial interests, which is our core duty and our legal duty. But doing so and doing it the right way does have collateral benefits to the people in the state of Maryland, and we're very happy with that. I will say on minority investing, kind of like climate, where with climate, we're measuring the risk and making sure we're taking that risk into consideration, and we're looking at the reward for new technology and should we invest in what we can invest in to take advantage of the changes in climate. For minority investors, we're not saying that we're not giving women and minority investors a leg up on everyone else to try to make our numbers bigger. But what we are doing is making sure that we're leaving no stone unturned when we're trying to identify great managers that could add value to our portfolio. And we've been so successful at that our minority managers constitute 20% of our managers. In the universe, minority managers only constitute 2 or 3% of the manager universe. And they're smaller managers generally, and they're harder to find. So we're doing all that work to find the best investments. And that also lets us find managers that we may not have discovered if we didn't look so hard. And they're functioning very well in our portfolio, which continues to outperform. So those are the types of things when you hear these debates on ESG, and if you want to know where we are, that's where we are. We're being prudent investors doing the right thing. And we don't feel like we need to get involved in the craziness that you see in the political debate. I do see here what percentage is currently funded. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that when I was talking. The system's currently 77% funded if you use the actuarial smooth method. So as I was talking about, we smooth everything by averaging all of what we do so we can keep contribution rates level. But if you look at the market value of assets, if we weren't doing all the smoothing and we weren't looking at what the statute says we do for smoothing, we're 83% funded, which is fantastic. 83% is the goal in some other states. It's an aspirational goal that's maybe unattainable in states like Illinois that I came from. But being over 80% funded is great. And the average pension system is actually not funded. I forget where, oh, I did see that, but the data was old. I think the average system where we're at 83, if you're looking at the market value, would be in the mid 70s in terms of the funded status. So we're gaining on some of our peers and doing very well. And things really are very secure. Virginia, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Noven. Thank you for your presentation. It's very good information. I have a question for you. I'm the legislative aide, and so I look at the bills in the legislature to see which ones we should take positions on. And I'd like to know if there are any particular bills that you would like our support on.
Well, yeah, thank you. One thing I'd like to see what's going to come out. I think you really are going to want to be involved if the Senate does have a study, and this isn't a bill, but on on retirement benefits. Because I'm encouraging the General Assembly to take a look at retirement benefits and figure out, are the systems the way you have them structured, providing the benefits that you want for your members? And that's something we can't do, and we would need you to weigh in. Because
It's not a bill.
It's not a bill. What happened was there was a bill on automatic enrollment. There was a bill on automatically enrolling people into the supplemental plan.
Right.
And we were asked, what do you think about that? And what we think is there's lots of great ways to fill the retirement readiness gap. And automatic features work. But when I was talking to some of our union friends, I don't want to call out which one, but at lunch, he was asking me, well, if people are going to contribute an extra percentage point, let's say of their salary, to their pension system or to their retirement, why wouldn't we just put it in the pension? And that's a pretty good argument. If you really are going to try to push people towards additional contributions, and if we do the analysis and find out that we think some of that is necessary, why would we put it in a 401k style plan that's run by Nationwide? Why wouldn't we work with what we have here and see if there's a way to improve the benefits through the DB plan first? And I think I would support that as part of the discussion before we start sending people's money to a vendor who's going to make money off of it. I mean, I'm not saying that all supplemental plans are wrong and people should save supplementally, and that's an important part of it's the third stool. But maybe we should look at the first two first two legs of the three-legged stool first and make sure we've got that right. So, that's where some of these conversations have come from. And the vesting period, I think people really are starting to complain about that, wondering how it's disadvantaging teachers. And when they ask me, I tell them, yeah, I think it does. And I don't think that's a great policy.
The 10-year vesting period.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I'm speaking on myself, not as the representative from the retirement system, who, that's not a discussion we're allowed to get into. We're supposed to be objective, but in my former life as someone who talked about retirement plan design, long vesting periods just disadvantage huge swaths of employees. And as employees become more and more mobile, I mean, should a teacher who teaches at 4 different schools, for example, have less of a benefit than a teacher that teaches at one school? I guess you could say maybe, but should that teacher end up with no benefit at all other than their own contributions back? Probably not. So I think there's a good policy discussion to be had. And I think your voice would be exactly the voice that they're going to need to hear from.
Thank you.
If there's anything, do you foresee any use of the budget surplus to do a one-time payment to the pension system? I don't. I do think, though, if there were going to be some use of the budget, I don't. Well, maybe there would be a one-time. I guess that could happen. I know that Governor Hogan had some extra contributions. The problem is, just so you all know, I mean, it's great when there's more money in the system because it does immediately raise our funded status. The problem is that also gets amortized over time. So it makes us a little stronger, but at the end of the day, we're not going to get fully funded any sooner. We're just a little bit more well-funded in the short term. So it's great. It's a good press release, but in a sense, you end up giving that all back over the next, through 2039. So I would rather, if they were going to commit to the pension system, to the conversation we're just having, I'd rather see them look at benefits and decide if they can actually afford to make some adjustments to some of the things they, some of the changes they made during the reforms, and decide if there are other ways to benefit the membership and make sure that they can retire with dignity. Then those of us who were teaching in 2011 did fight that part of the reform, but were unsuccessful. Though I'm sure you did. When I say we about not fighting the reforms, I'm really talking more about the system really did kind of embrace that we needed to do this. So the folks here where I work now, and that we did what had to be done, and they were proud they were able to get something done to shore up the pension system and have the anti-DB people going away. And I can't take that victory away from them. Yeah, I've been parts of these discussions in many states, and it is hard to, you do want to see everyone getting along and doing something, because otherwise you end up in situations like the states that are 30-40% funded because they never came to any kind of terms, and that's even worse for the pensions than what we have now. But it does seem like things have changed. It does seem like we're on the path to being fully funded at some point. We're not going to have these unfunded liability payments anymore. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to talk about, is the pension system doing what it's supposed to be doing, and using any resources that there may be to play a part in that type of discussion. At least that would be my thought. Anyone else? Anything?
I don't see anything else in the chat column. So I'm assuming that there are no other questions for you, Mr. Noven. Well, I can't thank you enough for that encouraging news. We are always concerned about our pension, and we're always happy to hear the good news that you bring to us. So thank you so much, and we will be in touch if we have any.
I did see one last question pop up.
One last question. Yes, there is one.
Is there a possibility of raising the 3% COLA cap? I probably should have covered that, knowing that question would come up. So to the point I was just making in Wanda's question about, or not Wanda's question. Yeah, it was Wanda's question. Also, do I foresee a use of the budget surplus? So if there was going to be a use of the budget surplus, frankly, I could see that budget surplus coming in to do something about a COLA, as opposed to, and obviously you'd have to change the law for that. But that would be something I could see some pressure on legislators and the governor to do something about. And I do think that's something where we're really lagging. That's certainly one of the levers that is disadvantaging a lot of our members. And we, if you're never going to keep up for the next, who knows how long, if you're not keeping up with inflation, that's definitely going to erode the purchasing power of our members and make it harder for them to, maintain their standard of living. So that is something that would certainly make some sense if they wanted to spend a surplus to address needs of the members. I think that would be money better spent than just putting a little money in the trust fund and leaving the formula the way it is. But I do think there's going to be some pressure, and I do think we've got some lawmakers who, may be open to that kind of conversation, because they're going to be hearing it too. All right, thank you, everyone. I don't want to take more of my time. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Okay, according to our agenda, the next person who will be speaking to us is Rebecca Ruff, the Operating Budget Manager for the Department of Legislative Services, and she's going to provide for us a Maryland budget overview. So Rebecca.
Morning. Thank you for having me. I have unfortunately been experiencing technical difficulties over the last several days, and I've actually dropped internet connection twice during the meeting this morning. So if I drop off, I apologize. Before I go through my notes, I will just note for all of you that DLS did provide a fiscal briefing to the Joint Senate Budget and Taxation Committee and the House Appropriations Committee last Wednesday. And that briefing document is available on the General Assembly's website. If at the top you click on budget and you go to publications, it's the first item listed as the fiscal briefing. And so you'll be able to find all of the materials that I discussed today available in that document. In terms of what's going on with the budget, revenues have continued to outperform estimates, with fiscal 2022 closing with a just under $5.5 billion cash surplus. That carried forward into fiscal 2023, where we're anticipating closing the year out with about $2.3 billion in cash and a $1.1 billion structural surplus. The governor's plan leaves an estimated closing fund balance in the general fund of $820 million, a 10% balance in the rainy day fund, and about $337 million structural balance. This is all, the rainy day fund balance meets the spending affordability goals, but the cash and structural balance actually exceeds the limits that spending affordability, or the minimums that spending affordability had set this past December. General fund spending does decline in fiscal 2024. This is in part because of what's going on with the appropriation to the rainy day fund. There was a statutorily required appropriation of $2.3 billion in fiscal 2023, and the governor's plan does not provide an additional allocation in fiscal 2024. Instead, he takes $1 billion of the required allocation and has a BRFA that redirects $500 million to the Blueprint Fund to offset future costs for the implementation of the Blueprint legislation, and also directs $500 million to the dedicated purpose account for future transportation capital needs, as yet to be defined. In total, spending across all funds in fiscal 2024 declines by about 1.8%. This includes a 4.4% decrease in general funds and an 8.3% decrease in federal funds. However, if you are to take the rainy day fund out of the equation, what we're actually seeing is general fund growth of about 4.3% and total growth of about 1.9% in comparison to fiscal 2023. The decline that we see in federal aid, I would just note, is largely the result of the dissipation of ARPA funds that had been available in previous budgets associated with the federal COVID stimulus. Once again, I see someone asking. The fiscal briefing document is available by going to the General Assembly's website, clicking on budget and the bar across the top, going to publications, and
we'll wait a minute and see if Rebecca is able to come back to us. And did everybody get the answer to Sharon's question about where to find that briefing? Again, you go to the General Assembly website, click under budget, and I believe Rebecca said it was the first item. So if you wanted to see that report that was given last week, you can find that on the website. I think I might be correct in assuming that we've lost Rebecca for a while. She might be able to come back to us. So I'm thinking that maybe we should go ahead to our next speaker, and if Rebecca comes back, we'll give her some more time. Wanda, is Tammy Bresnaham with us yet?
I have not seen Tammy yet.
Okay, well, I believe you said that Mr. Goldberg is here, correct?
Yes, Adam is with us. Yes, Adam is here. I'm putting the web address for the General Assembly website in the chat for everybody also. And hopefully Rebecca will be back soon.
That's right. Okay, we always say technology is wonderful when it works. Okay, so moving on to the next speaker on our agenda, Adam Goldberg is the Senior Legislative Representative for the National Retired Teachers Association, AARP, and he's going to talk to us about the NRTA legislative priorities and pension attacks. So Mr. Goldberg, the floor is yours. And if anybody has any questions, if you can just put them in chat for Mr. Goldberg and he will address them.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Wanda. And if Rebecca does come back, we'll just stop my presentation and go right back to her, because with mine, I think we can break it up. And the same is true if Tammy arrives. But thank you for inviting me today. I think it's going to be an exciting legislative year, both in Annapolis with the new administration and here in Washington because, well, it's Washington and there's always something exciting going on here for good or ill. One of the things that I liked about the agenda today was I was going to listen to Tammy and get some insights into what AARP Maryland's priorities are ahead of what I have to say, but I'm looking forward to hearing what she's got to say after that. But let me give you some thoughts on NRTA and AARP as a whole and what we see as our legislative priorities in 2023. First of all, I want to say that, in Maryland, NRTA's priorities are your priorities. The things that MRSPA and AARP Maryland see as the most important legislative issues for you are the most important for us. That's sort of the way we're guided. AARP has what we call a national to nationwide philosophy. So in other words, every state and every state office has different concerns, different issues, different political realities. And we respect and support that in the national office. And that goes for NRTA as well, because, as you mentioned earlier, Carla, NRTA is part of AARP. So for us, NRTA's goals, priorities are AARP priorities. We don't have anything separate from that. And that's the way we deal with our state offices. That's the way our government affairs, talking legislatively, that's the way AARP Government Affairs Department works. What is it that each state needs and each state has to do? Because, a lot of times an AARP priority in one state is something that they've already taken care of and they don't need to do legislation on. And another state, it just hasn't been ripe yet. So every state has, and every state office has a different need. So while AARP sets out some national priorities for our work in states across the nation, and I'll chat about those in a minute here, the state offices do set their own priorities every year, and we in the national office work with them to achieve their goals, which is why I'm looking forward to hearing what Tammy has to say. But if there is something that you'd like to work on legislatively, please let me know. I'd be happy to chat with you about it and see if I can help. I can always give you advice and counsel on your legislative work, just sort of the basics, talk around some ideas and concepts and things that you're thinking you might want to do and whether it makes some sense. And if AARP Maryland is involved, I can really dive in to help you with everything that you're doing on those issues. So from analyzing the bills to helping you draft testimony and that sort of thing. But for us, one of our constraints is what the state office is involved in or is open to us working on with you. So what are NRTA's national advocacy priorities? And the first easy thing to say is, again, we follow along with AARP's national priorities. So I'm going to go through those in a moment. But of course, because we are NRTA and you're retired educators, pensions make our list. That's always the case. And it's at the top of the list as well. But I'm going to save that one for the end of my talk. And spoiler alert, AARP's legislative priorities in general include pensions, which is really great from my perspective. So every year, AARP's Government Affairs Department puts together a list of legislative priorities, and 2023 is no exception. Except for the fact that it hasn't been finalized yet. And I know we are here at the end of January and it has not been finalized, but the substance of it has. It really has come down to a formatting question. So I don't know if you can see this with my background on. I'll hold it in front of me. These are the 2023 legislative priorities, but I can't share them with you yet because they haven't been formatted. And so there might be a little bit of editing, and that's just the rules I live by. So I'll let Wanda know where you can access that when it's finalized. What I can tell you is it will be electronic. There will be no print edition. It's 4 pages long, so you can print it out yourself fairly easily. But what I want to do is I want to touch on a few of the buckets of issues hitting the top issues in those priorities. And I'm going to start with health security. And I know, obviously pensions are the most important thing for any retired educators association around the country. But I want to mention the health security stuff because I'm sure that Tammy will be working on some of these things. And I think these are issues that could matter to you as well. So give it some thought and see if these are some of these issues are things that maybe you can partner with Tammy on. And the first one that's really high on the list is prescription drug affordability. And as you may know, in 2022, AARP helped lead efforts to enact legislation on the federal level to allow Medicare to negotiate the prices of drugs. It limits year after year price increases and caps out-of-pocket costs in Medicare Part D. We'll continue to work to protect and improve upon those policies. And at the state level, we're continuing to work on lowering drug prices. And when I say at the state level, I am talking all across the country. I'm not talking Maryland specific with anything that I'm talking about. That I'm leaving to Tammy. But we are working to lower drug prices, including through greater access to low-cost generics, improved competition, and lower out-of-pocket costs and other measures. At the federal level, we're working to protect Medicare benefits, increase access to care and services, and improve quality and value, including improving health outcomes and ensuring the program's financial integrity, which is really important. And that includes hearing, dental, and vision, which has always been something very important to us to add to that program. We're also working at the federal level and the state level to increase access to evidence-based care via telehealth technologies. And we all know how important telehealth and Zoom in general has been important to us in the last couple of years. And we don't want to see those gains in telehealth be lost because it has been so important, particularly for underserved populations. As all of you know, and I know this as well, having that access to telehealth really does make a difference in our daily lives. And I don't think that that's just tied to the pandemic. We just realized how important it can be because of the pandemic. AARP will continue to advocate for protecting families served by Medicaid, particularly older adults and individuals with disabilities. At the state level, we'll push for eliminating and reducing waiting lists, increasing access to adult day services, which is very important, and empowering individuals to live independently. And we'll try to expand eligibility. And really that ties into the next one that I want to raise, which I think is very important to all of you, because I think we're all going to face this at some point, and that's family caregiving. Things like paid leave, family caregiving tax credits, and reimbursement programs are important, as well as expanding respite and other home and community-based services, and increase recruitment and retention of paid direct care workers. Those are things that we're going to be working on across the country. We've seen how important they are, and I think that that's something that I would hope that retired educators associations would look at and perhaps weigh in if the AARP state offices are working on them. And again, we'll see what Tammy has to say about that, but we are also working on adult guardianship and power of attorney laws. And we'll be continuing to work on nursing home quality issues, insurance issues. Food security is a big one for us this year. There is a farm bill at the federal level, so SNAP benefits will be something that'll be discussed, I'm sure. And of course, if there are any continuing and ongoing COVID issues, that we will certainly be working on those to ensure that everyone's safe. But let's get down to the financial security issues, which I know are so important to you and to us as well. We'll talk about a few others before we get to the pensions, but we believe that Congress must address Social Security's long-term funding shortfall and ensure workers and retirees receive their earned benefits. So we'll work on that, and we'll fight to protect current and future beneficiaries from any harmful reform efforts and advocate for much needed improvements in customer service at the Social Security Administration. Now, how much we'll see any of that gain traction, who knows? Because of course, the Social Security Trust Fund, as we know, is going to run out of money, but that's more than a decade away, which in political terms in Washington is, so far in the future that the likelihood of getting anywhere this year is low, but we're going to continue to work on it and push it because we've got to build that support, because we do have to deal with those funding issues. And, one of the things that someone mentioned last week at a conference that I was at is now would be a perfect time to deal with Social Security. You have a Republican House of Representatives, a Democratic Senate, a Democratic president. Nobody has to take ownership of any of the tough decisions. They can hand in hand, go forward, and everybody is on the hook for the decisions that are made. So nobody has to make the tough choice alone. But that's not going to happen, to be perfectly honest. But we're still going to raise these issues because they are so important to us, to our members, to you. And we're going to continue to work on that. We're also continuing to work around the country to advance tax relief for Social Security beneficiaries who need it most at the state level, including retirement benefits such as pensions. But fortunately, Maryland doesn't tax Social Security benefits, so that's not an issue. And I know that something was done related to tax credits last year, and I'm sorry, I don't know the details of that. But, I feel like Maryland's in a pretty good position on the taxation of retirement benefits. Another thing that we're going to work on is age discrimination, and we're going to do it at both the federal and the state level, where we're looking to enhance age protections in employment, which I think is another important issue for all of you. I know that this is the Maryland retired school, but some of you may have other jobs or may look to get back into the workforce, or as I always say, it's not always just the people that we're working with, it's their spouses, their relatives, the people they care about. And so we're going to continue to work on that issue. We're also going to do some work on discrimination in the workplace. Related to that, what I should say is workforce development issues. So job training and reskilling, because this is crucial as the population ages. And I think that this is, again, it's related to that discrimination issue. It's the other side of the coin. We've got to keep people ready to be in the workforce as they age and technologies change. And maybe the things that they've been doing in their life, this may not be related to you as teachers, because we're always going to need teachers, but the skills that a lot of individuals developed over the years as the workforce changes, those skills are not as helpful as some of the newer skills, and so they need to be retrained. We're also going to be working on fraud, financial exploitation, and consumer protection. We're going to work for legislative and regulatory changes at both the federal and the state level to better protect consumers by focusing on prevention, intervention, training, recovery, and increasing enforcement. And we will continue to fight all forms of elder abuse, including financial exploitation. We're going to continue efforts to eliminate the earned income tax credit wage cap, promote state level property tax relief, and provide those family caregiver tax credits that I alluded to earlier, as well as reduce in states, as I mentioned, the taxation of Social Security. One issue that I think I'm going to not get into as much as I had planned on is just mention that we also have as our priority some livable communities issues. And I know that issues like housing and transportation and state and local infrastructure may not be something that you all are interested in, and probably shouldn't be based on what the interests of your members are. But one thing that we do work on is of course, as part of our livable communities work, is we work on combating efforts to unjustly increase the price of electricity and gas and other utilities issues. And those may be of interest to you, and also as part of it, broadband issues, which I know have been important to you in the past. And I've worked with you on that related to the emergency broadband benefit back in the day when that program existed before it was changed to the, now I am forgetting what the acronym stands for, the ACP, but it's the, connectivity program. But it's essentially the program that helps individuals who cannot afford access to broadband get access to broadband. And I'm happy to work with you on that. And hopefully when we do, I'll remember what the acronym stands for. But we will happy to work on broadband issues with you. But I did save the best for last, and that's AARP's legislative priorities on pensions and retirement savings. So on the federal level, we're looking to expand access to retirement savings while complementing state-run programs that we've been advocating for over the last few years. So that's to provide, the sort of the 401k type of programs that a lot of small employers don't provide for their employees. And we've worked on that in Maryland. And, one of the reasons why I raise it is because it is in our priorities. But another is, again, my feeling on all of this is that for you think of your pensions as retired educators. But again, your members may have other jobs now that they've retired from being an educator. And this sort of program can help them with their retirement security. Many of your members, of course, have spouses. And again, as we all look out for our children and what they have access to, if they're working for smaller employers who don't provide those retirement benefits, this is a really great thing to do. We do it at the state level and the federal level as well. And we are going to continue to fight to ensure the rights and benefits of current pension recipients are not undermined or reduced. One thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that financial advisors offer advice solely in the saver's interest. And we're working to make sure that that stays that way, that fiduciary duty is respected. We're going to continue to support defined benefit plans because they are the most reliable and cost-efficient way to provide financial security throughout retirement. And we'll keep encouraging governments to make their annual contributions to retirement systems. And as you've heard, that's not such an issue in Maryland. I think you're in really good hands there as the process goes on. So I'll leave that and then just address one other thing that Wanda wanted me to mention, which I've got very little to say on at the moment, although we are vigilant about it, but that's about some of the pension fights around the country. So you sort of know what's going on elsewhere and things that you might look out for or hear about and be concerned about. And so far this year, there isn't a whole heck of a lot. Montana, there is legislation to change the default to putting new state employees, though not teachers, I want to be clear about that, in the defined contribution plan, not the defined benefit plan, which is the case now. So even though teachers are not impacted by the legislation, your counterparts in the Montana Retired Educators Association are taking a position to oppose this bill, as is AARP Montana. And the reason for that is, number one, to protect other retirees in the state. But number two, just because the legislation does not include teachers today does not mean it won't include teachers tomorrow through an amendment or another bill being introduced. Now, this does not eliminate the defined benefit plan, but we feel like defaulting to the defined contribution is not the way to go, of course. So we will be weighing in on that. Also out in that part of the country, North Dakota had a study committee last year to look at it. And what they found was that to move from their defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan would cost a fortune. So there is actually legislation there that would increase contributions to the defined benefit plan, but would make a defined contribution an option. We are concerned there that there will be legislation to eliminate the defined benefit and create an all defined contribution. So we're being vigilant about that. But at the moment, we feel pretty confident that the legislation there that would really sort of strengthen the defined benefit plan is what's going to go forward. And that's what the AARP state office out there is supporting. In Michigan, the AARP state office is working on legislation to repeal taxes on pension income. You know, they only started taxing pension income a decade ago. I think it was in 2011, so a little more than a decade ago. And there have been some changes in the legislature there that we feel this could be a really good opportunity to repeal those taxes. So that's certainly a possibility. We are watching for attacks on defined benefit plans in Florida, Kentucky, Kansas, and Oklahoma because they've perennially been places to look out for, but there is nothing at the moment there. In Alaska, they eliminated defined benefit a few years ago. There might be a push to bring it back because they are having trouble recruiting and retaining teachers, as you can imagine. And in fact, I heard the other day that they are giving a $40,000 bonus to individuals who will move to Alaska to drive buses. So you can see what kind of a problem they are having there. And it really is a shame because, they are losing teachers to the lower 48 because what's the point in staying in Alaska when you have really no good retirement option there with the defined contribution versus the defined benefit. And then the last one I will give you is your neighbor, West Virginia, where last year there was a bonus paid to the current state employees, a one-time bonus because of inflation and the state having a surplus. And the governor was interested in doing that for retirees as well. And for a number of reasons, we could not get that through the legislature. So that is certainly a possibility that may come up. That would be a one-time payment. They do not have a COLA in West Virginia because their retirement system had been perennially underfunded. They are doing a very good job of getting back to full funding. They seem to be on track, but that has meant that there has not been a COLA in many years. And just like the current state employees, the retired state employees, including teachers, have been impacted by the high inflation. And so we are certainly hoping that we can get them some sort of a one-time bonus there, but I don't know whether that's possible. So, with that, I will turn it over to any questions. I'm sorry I went through that very quickly, but, as I said, we will get you the written copy of that. And again, I am happy to work with you on any of that. And if AARP Maryland is working on it, to work with them together would be really fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. I'm checking the chat. I don't see any questions. Does anybody have a question for Mr. Goldberg? A lot of information to digest. Thank you so much.
It is, but again, I just want to stress, if you're
Yes.
working on anything legislatively, please let me know. And if there's anything I can do to help, I will certainly do that. That's why I'm here.
I'm certain that people heard things they're concerned about because you are covering quite a bit of information. Thank you so much. And I still don't see any questions. So I don't see anybody waving frantically or unmuting themselves. So I assume that is a no.
Wanda knows how to reach me. Just as the lieutenant governor has her email address and her address out there, I think Wanda's got mine. And I should mention, since the lieutenant governor did mention it and Martin mentioned it as well, I am a product of public schools as well.
Very good.
And my niece is currently a public school teacher.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Always good to hear from you. And I've just received a message that Rebecca keeps losing power, so she's not going to be able to come back to us, but Wanda has placed the website where you can find the document that she referred to. So just scroll up on the chats and you'll find that information. We're sorry she won't be able to come back with us. Okay, our next speaker is Tammy Bresnaham, who is the Associate State Director of Advocacy for AARP Maryland. And she's going to give us some information about Maryland legislative priorities. Tammy.
Good morning, Carla. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
It's great to be here and to follow my colleague, Adam Goldberg. I too am a product of Maryland Public Schools. well, I don't know if Adam is a Maryland Public School grad, but I am. This is my 45th year out of high school. I was the first graduating class at Chesapeake High School in Pasadena. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment. And, you know, I worked with, as a student, Virginia Crespo, and it gives me a lot of privilege and honor that she works with us every Friday, and during the legislative session, we partner. And so if there is an education issue, or if there's some other issue that she thinks is important or we think is important, we try to stick together and become a team. Coalition building in Annapolis is very important because AARP is nonpartisan, and that prohibits us from buying campaign tickets or donations to fundraisers. And so we need to have the loudest voice possible. With nearly 850,000, or with over 850,000 members across the state, as Adam said, AARP advocates on issues that matter most to Marylanders age 50 and over. We are working to make improvements to long-term care, lowering prescription drug costs, support adults with cognitive and behavioral health needs, empower family caregivers, promote financial security, ensure utilities are affordable, reliable, and connect all Marylanders with high-performing, affordable, high-speed internet. With that said, it has been a busy season. Right now, there is over 500 House bills and well over 450 Senate bills. I have 7 pages on my docking, on my tracker, and that goes from everything from tax credits to utilities to cognitive and behavioral health. And I think I mentioned, and I did mention in our overall priorities for the state, one of them is near and dear to my heart. And, you know, as we age, it becomes part of the spectrum, is making sure that there's long-term care improvements. We're going to be looking at nursing homes because a lot of them are being bought up by equity firms, and we want that to be transparent, because what happens in nursing homes once they're bought by an equity firm or they transfer, it's like a merger and acquisition, then they reduce the size of the staff, and people that are in those facilities, even if it's in a rehab, and a lot of people only touch on nursing homes because they go there after a knee replacement, a hip replacement, or some fall that they need, or even like a small stroke. They go there to rehab, and they are treated just like the residents. And we want to make sure that that stay is quality. So we'll be looking for bills, and we'll be sharing that information with Virginia if you'd like to weigh in. The other thing that is important in the long-term care spectrum is residential service agencies, or those providers that have care at home for individuals. What most people don't know is when they need an individual to come into their home, one, the thing that they should ask for is there a background check? Not just a criminal background check, but like the state of Maryland, making sure that they had not committed crimes against older individuals in the past. The other thing that we're looking at is, how is that employee classified? You all know that you as teachers, you were full-time employees, you received a paycheck, you received benefits, you had time off, you had leave accumulated. Well, a lot of individuals that work in the long-term care spectrum and who go into people's homes are considered independent contractors. And for a lot of us, that becomes an issue. One, if they get hurt while they're taking care of you, what happens to them? They have to pay their own medical. They also have to, they're not eligible for workman's comp and a series of other things. And then if they hurt you in turn, who's responsible for making the good on that? That means if they steal something or they do something to you, you have to go after that independent contractor. And in the Medicaid arena, we want to make sure we're trying to look at how those employees are paid, whether or not they're classified as independent, whether or not they're getting a benefit. And we want to make sure that people know before these individuals come into their home how are they classified? And so that's a bill that we'll be looking at. It's Senate Bill 180, and it's sponsored by Senator Bidel. We are also looking at the reimbursement of those, especially residential service providers that are getting Medicaid. And we'll be looking at that. That's House Bill 318 by Delegate Bagnall. And then there will be another bill just dropped about how those particular workers, what kind of certifications they have. And one of the things I want to bring your attention to, that some people, after they turn 65 or 70, they're looking at assisted living. One of the things that we have not been able to do, and Virginia can attest to this, we have not been able to update the assisted living regulations in over 10 years. They were due in December. And one of the things that worries me is that the industry, the assisted living industry, there's two things. I live on Arundel Beach Road in Severna Park. Up the street from me, there is an assisted living. But when you walk into that facility, you can't tell the difference between an assisted living and a nursing home because they are providing a higher level of care. If they were a nursing home, they would have to have so many RNs, so many people with certified nursing assistants, that they don't have to have that because they're in assisted living. And so we want to make sure that people that are in assisted livings, that the regulations meet the level of care. And so we have been supporting legislation over the years that would do that. And so, and one of the other important aspects is, and again, I live in Severna Park, and in Severna Park, there's been 7 new facilities pop up in the last 5 years. 7, huge. They're like castle types. And they all offer what we call memory care. And memory care is not defined in Maryland law. And that means that if they have someone in there that has dementia or Alzheimer's, because the facility calls it memory care, the law states that anybody that works in a facility that has Alzheimer's dementia care has to have at least 5 hours a year of training. And because the facility calls it memory care, that's different than Alzheimer's and dementia care. So it's just a little bit of a play on words that you have to be curious about. So that's what we're worried about in long-term care, because it is part of the aging spectrum. It's not all about the aging spectrum, but it is, we all have parents, we all have grandparents, we all have relatives. I just had a friend that's 50. She had a massive stroke and she is now in a facility in Baltimore County. So it's, it can affect any of us at any time. The other thing that we've been working on the last couple of years, and we've developed a volunteer base on it with a lot of professionals, a lot of retired professionals, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. We're looking at the cognitive and behavioral health needs in Maryland. What does that mean? What kind of services are out there and resources for older Marylanders? And we started looking at this prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic has really put us on a very high-speed train to look at this, because a lot of older Marylanders became isolated. A lot of older Marylanders, unfortunately, developed behavioral health issues. They were already suffering from some kind of memory issue or cognitive issue. And so we have been supporting legislation like House Bill 271, Senate Bill 3, which is the funding for the 988 system in Maryland. We are also supporting Senate Bill 108, which is supported and sponsored by Senator Augustine, and that requires behavioral health wellness visits for insurance companies to pay for that. One of the big things, and Adam mentioned this, is how do we lower the cost of prescription drugs? And Maryland was in the forefront. In 2018, we passed the Prescription Drug Affordability Board. Now, why is that important to MRSPA? Because it's only looking at what state and local governments pay for prescription drugs. And so this board has been meeting. They meet at least once a month. We have someone that is on the council, And there will be a bill this year. There's two bills, one in the House and one in the Senate. It's called the Prescription Drug Affordability Board upper payment limits. So they will be looking at those drugs which cost more, and that's House Bill 279, Senate Bill 202. We're always looking for a way to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. And just let me bear off a minute for the federal shout out, because what AARP did in 2022 with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act included a historic measure to lower prescription drug prices in the country. This allows Medicare to negotiate, which, you know, we didn't know why that happened over 20 years ago, but for 20 years ago, we have been lobbying Congress to change this law. And while the bill goes out to 2026, they've already started looking at what drugs that they're going to be able to negotiate with. And those top drugs, you know, on the list right now, and I'm not really good at all the pronunciations, but the first one is Eliquis, and that is around atrial fibrillation. And then the second one is Januvia, which is a diabetes drug, Zantia, which is a cancer drug, Mybetriq, which is an overactive bladder drug, and then Oranca, which is a rheumatoid arthritis drug, which we all know affects a lot of older Marylanders, including yours truly. So that's the shout out for the national team. And we actually, in Maryland, one of our volunteers was selected as the national spokesperson. You probably saw him on national TV, national ads. His name is Larry Zarzecki. He is a retired state trooper, so he draws a pension like you all do from the state of Maryland, and he succumbed to Parkinson's disease when he was 50 years old. Larry is now almost 60, and he was paying over $3,000 a month out of pocket for a drug that would reduce his tremors. So we thank Larry and for his advocacy on that. One of the other things that Adam talked about in the livable communities, we are taking a look. There's a lot of bills in the legislature right now around safe streets, around transportation, around utilities. And we are a big watchdog in Maryland on utilities. And one of the issues that we have been working on for the last 4 or 5 years, and a lot of you may have come in contact with these folks, is what they call the retail energy suppliers. They're the people that either knock on your door, call you, or send you a letter like this saying, find out how much you could save if you switched your electric or your gas provider. And what we know about these suppliers is that once you sign on, if you do not keep looking at your bill every month, after the initial trial period, your utility bill can go up double, triple, quadruple. And so we have been very adamant about putting some controls and some regulatory parameters around these individuals. And there will be a bill in by Senator Hershey that looks at that around door to door, about making telephone calls, and maybe a couple of other things. All right, the legislature has not passed any legislation protecting retirees' health benefits as provided by, okay, any chance of getting a grandfather law. Mr. Rosser, I know that that's an important issue and we weigh in on it every year. And, you know, hopefully with the new administration and maybe with some more money that they found as far as the budget, we're hoping that they will make some improvements. I mean, I'm a retired state employee and, you know, I haven't started drawing that retirement, but, you know, the prescription drug benefit was very much a benefit that I was looking forward to. So we're going to push and push and push, but, you know, I've seen a couple of bills in. Let's see. Again, we follow MRSPA's lead. In Virginia, we chat with her about protecting retirement income. I don't know what that budgetary allotment looks like this year. I should have done that homework before, but maybe Virginia knows. And then one of the things I'm proud to say is that I have been on the transition team for Governor Westmore. And one of the things that we hope that will encompass a lot of these activities is making Maryland an age-friendly state. And that's under the livable communities bucket, like Adam was saying. And once we elevate aging, that it's just not about, you know, the long-term care bucket or the caregiver bucket, but it's about allowing people to age in Maryland with dignity and respect, and that they have services, resources available to them no matter where they live, and making sure that where they live is their first choice and not their last choice. What do you know about investing in solar farms to reduce cost of electricity? I know that there is a big push on community solar, which is in this retail energy supplier bucket. We have been asked to support it. We are going to support it. It is an option, and we think that either that low-income people should have the same abilities and fixed income people to use solar just as anybody else. There is a solar community solar bill in, and it's in a pilot. We're asking that it be extended to a full-blown program. So those are a couple of things. I did do the last year's bill, like Adam was talking about, called 2022 Maryland Tax Relief. Just reduces taxes. It wasn't that big of a deal, I don't think. I mean, in the big scheme of things, you have to be over 65, what I'm sure a lot of you are. It adjusted the federal income at $150,000 per couple or $100,000 single. And it gave an additional credit of $1,750 or $1,000, $1,750 for a joint filer and $1,000 for a single filer. One of the other things, if you've had long-term care insurance, which we hope that a lot of people do take, we know it's getting expensive, but those folks that have had it since 2004-5, there's a bill in House Bill 160, and there's a Senate version sponsored by Senator Klausmeyer that would give you a tax credit for long-term care, maintaining that long-term care insurance. And I think Adam also talked about guardianship. And one of the things that we are supporting is a bill by Delegate Teresa, which is House Bill 244, Estates and Trust. And it allows people to file their, you know, anything in probate or in estates and trust electronically, and requires the Register of Wills to accept those, except for like an original will. So, you know, we're supporting that to make the probate process a little bit easier. So we are, you know, we're well on our way. Like I said, Virginia is an active participant in our weekly calls. We have at least 30 to 35 people that participate every week. This week, we have 19 bills that we are weighing in on, and we have 8 different volunteers who have drafted testimony and or who will go to Annapolis and testify in support of legislation that we feel will make Maryland a better place for those people that are over 50. And so with that, you know, again, I'm that proud public school graduate, but I also have, you know, I have a daughter-in-law who teaches. She's the chair of the she's the chair of the science department at Meade High School. My mother is a retired teacher, was a retired teacher, and I have 9 teachers in my family. So if I wasn't doing something for teachers, I think I might hear it from not only my son, but my nieces and nephews who have all been, who are all, you know, dedicating their life to making education a priority for students. So with that, besides the questions in the chat, I'm happy to address any of those.
I was wondering if Mr. Goldberg would like to follow up with anything with Tammy.
No, I mean, that was great, Tammy. I learned a lot about what you're doing. The only thing I'd say is, again, take a look at the things that AARP Maryland is supporting or opposing, for that matter, or working on. And if you're interested in weighing in on any of those issues, obviously you can work with Tammy, but I am here to support you in working with her. And she mentioned a lot of great issues that I think really impact your members, things like the prescription drugs and so on that we all care about. So I would be very happy to work with you if it's something that you all are interested in working with AARP Maryland on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Does anyone have any other questions for Ms. Bresnaham? Well, it looks like we don't. Well, we've looked at national priorities. We've looked at state priorities. Now we're going to look at association priorities. And I'm going to turn the program over to Virginia Crespo, who is the MRSPA legislative aide, and she is going to share the MRSPA legislative priorities. Virginia?
Well, good morning, everyone. The priorities have been sent out in a number of times, another number of ways, and we've discussed them quite a bit. If you have any questions about the specifics, please refer to them. But those are what we use when we decide what bills to follow, as AARP and NRTA does. I think that what I would like to do today is to explain to you what the committee does. I know that many of you have heard this before, but we do have some newcomers and additional members joining us today. The legislative committee meets first in August to refine and review our priorities. Then we begin meeting regularly during the session. Before each of our meetings during the session, my primary job is to go through the legislation that has been introduced in the legislature. And as Tammy said, it's getting close to 1,000 bills right now. Historically, the legislature introduces as many as 3,000 a year, passes about 300. But I've noticed in the last couple of years, there has been a significant effort to make the legislature operate more efficiently. Some of that, of course, came about because of COVID and the fact that citizens couldn't go down to the legislature. But in the process, they have also gone to a lot of electronic methods of communicating. And the conduct of the hearings this year, finally, we do have the opportunity for the public, for anyone, to attend the hearings and to attend the sessions in person. But there is still, you can tell that there's still a lot of work being done by the leadership to be more efficient in how they do business. And I think that's why we only have 900 bills to look at so far this year. What it has also done is that once a bill is introduced or dropped, it's not as long as it used to be until a hearing is scheduled. So sometimes they move pretty quickly with those. But when I go through them, I try to determine which bills I think are relevant to our members and reflective of our priorities. And I don't know if you have those, Lana, to put up the update. We send out the update to you all. I just would like to look at it for a moment to show, and this is what I send to the committee, and this is, then we discuss each bill. The members of the committee are assigned a bill that enables them to look at it ahead of time and see what they can find out about it, see if they can determine what the cost would be, although that information isn't always available right away. And then we discuss it. As you can see on here, we take a position either of support or opposition. Either of those we decide to either support or oppose with a letter or with a letter plus testimony. We can also, if you go back up to the top one, we can also decide to monitor. For example, House Bill 28, which is an income tax credit for caregivers of senior family members. We just felt that we needed more information about what that actually means and what it would cost. So we are monitoring that. once we take a position, the letter is prepared. It's sent out to the committee on MRSPA letterhead. And our position is explained to members of the committee, whoever was assigned a particular bill, writes the body of the letter and explains what our position is. As I listen to, you can take that down now. Thank you. As I listen to Tammy and Adam talk, as Tammy said, we work together. They represent retired people. We represent retired people and seniors. So much of what goes on, we work together on these issues, and that often defines which bills, for example, that I bring to the committee to discuss. The first one that actually passed the Senate this year is the one that Tammy mentioned, the 988 trust fund. 988 is a federal requirement now that you have the 911 for emergency help, but 988 is for mental health emergencies. And Maryland is the first one of the first states to actually make sure the funding is there. That's what this bill is about. It's passed the Senate, it's moved into the House. A number of the bills that Tammy mentioned, we are also either have looked at or we are looking at. This year, there's a lot of bills related to mental health issues or cognitive and behavioral health. Trying to get a handle on that. It's like a huge amorphous thing that is so difficult to deal with. Last year, in fact, a bill was put in to set up a study group to look at all the different committees that look at mental health issues. We're trying to get them to use the term cognitive and behavioral health issues and see if some of these committees can be combined, eliminated, added on to. So that's one of the things they've been working on for the past year. There are still some in there. We have, so far, the hearings have been held for two of the bills we're supporting. One is health insurance and annual behavioral health wellness visits, coverage and reimbursement, so that you can go to see a doctor, not just for your physical health, but your mental health. The required Medicare yearly exam includes some questions that are designed to reflect your mental health. But this one is a little broader than that because not everyone who is retired is on Medicare or old enough to be on Medicare. And another one that we have supported, we've been supporting this for 25 years, I would guess, income tax credit for long-term care premiums. Right now, the income tax credit is a one-time credit of $500. This bill would create a income tax credit for each year that you pay a premium for long-term care. And we have sent a letter of support of that, and we'll see. Once again, we keep putting it in there, hoping that this will be the magic year. With the new administration and changes, there are 50 new legislators this year, and there's been a lot of movement around the legislature in terms of committee chairmanships and memberships, and that sometimes can be what will break the logjam for a bill like this. We've also sent testimony in the form of a letter to oppose a bill that would require in-person proof of identity for voting in person during the election cycle. We feel that there's basically not a need for this. Maryland has no problems in this regard. And we do believe that for many people, particularly older Marylanders, it sometimes becomes difficult to get a proof of identity. If you're not out and about and able, if you're not driving, yes, you can get a state ID, but even that requires getting out and applying for it. And we just feel that it's not necessary. We have bills that we continue to look at the bills coming out. We will continue to make decisions about what to support or oppose. And I'm going to open it to questions.
There's one in the chat,
There's
Virginia.
one in the
Yes.
chat, yes.
Steve had a question.
All right, Steve, I'm looking for it.
Hopefully it's there.
Oh,
in the
here we
chat.
go. The legislature has not passed any legislation protecting retirees' health benefits from the local boards of education. Is that that's the one you addressed earlier,
Yeah,
right?
no, there was another one.
Okay, if
There's
a
another
member or local
Oh,
has an
Yeah,
Then
that's
we-
the one.
or information about a bill, how do they communicate that to the committee or assist in the process? Well, you send me a text,
Right. Or send
call me on the phone, you call Fred, you call anyone on the committee. In fact, we welcome that because when I read these bills, as I go through them, it's quite possible that I won't interpret it the way somebody else might, or I might miss
Right.
something that is important. And so we definitely welcome input from many members on this. In fact, encourage it.
Are there any other questions for Virginia? Any comments for Virginia?
I have one comment. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to openly, directly thank Virginia for all the good work she does on the legislative program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And there's another question. Is long-term caregiver tax credit have any real chance?
Better than last year. I don't know. I don't know why they just don't want to do it, because we know that having, and we told them, and Tammy told them, she testified on this too. This can save this will save the state money. For anybody with long-term care insurance, that's money that will not have to be spent by the state if someone has to go into long-term care. How logical can it be? So that's why I'm waiting to see if changes in membership of the legislature and changes in committee leadership might make the difference this year.
Okay.
I hear you, fellas.
Yes, as are many of us. Okay, does anyone else have a question? If you haven't put it in the chat, if you would unmute yourself and speak up.
Well, I have just one comment or question, and I'm not
Yes,
sure, I'm not sure whether there's any bill being introduced or not, but Maryland is one of the few states that still has inheritance taxes based on the relationship of the beneficiary of your estate. And I'm wondering if there's any interest or action in doing away with some of that stuff.
Steve, I have not seen anything in a number of years in relation to that. It just doesn't seem to be a topic of discussion.
Well, if you listen Saturday morning to I can't remember the guy's name now, it's a state attorney that is always comparing Maryland to Virginia on the issues of inheritance taxes and state taxes, etc. And ours,
When I say discussion, I mean within the legislature.
yeah, I understand.
okay, are there any other questions? Any comments? Anything you would like to share with Virginia and her committee? And as she already answered, if you do have something that you would like to share, get more information about, or provide your viewpoint, you can always get in touch with her or any member of the committee. Okay, well, it looks.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to say, if we take a look, we've learned, we've gotten so much information, national, state, and even our own committee. And I just think we all have a lot to think about and a lot to realize that there are people working for us. There are people looking after our best interests, and we have a voice. We can let them know what we want or what we are interested in. So I want to thank all our presenters, and I want to thank everybody who attended. But before you go, this is an MRSPA event. So you know there are door prizes, and you know Wanda is there to pull some names out of a hat. So Wanda, I'm going to introduce you. And do you have your little basket handy?
I actually, well, let me turn my camera back on. I actually have a
bowl.
very festive winter bowl.
Lovely.
All righty, so here we go. And the first name drawn is Linda Elwood from Cecil County.
Is Linda here?
Congratulations.
Linda's still on. Very good, Linda. Congratulations.
And number 2, Virginia McGraw from Charles County.
Charles County, okay. Congratulations, Virginia.
And this is the last one for today. And it is Tom Slater from Frederick County.
Frederick County. Hey, Tom, congratulations. And again, I'd like to thank everybody who joined us today. I always felt that these legislative workshops are very informative. I think it's very good for our members to know just everything that's being done for our benefit at the state level and at the national level through AARP and NRTA. So thank you very much. Now, I believe, just to show you how active and conscientious our legislative committee is, they are going to have a meeting following this meeting, but I believe it is scheduled for 12:30. Is that correct, Virginia?
It is scheduled for 12:30. I'm hoping that we can move it forward.
Why don't we just move it forward?
It is now 11:51. How far do, maybe those of us who've been sitting here for 2 hours or so might want to take a 15-minute break and be back in 15 minutes. How does that sound, everybody? Okay,
Is that right,
those that-
Wanda?
is that okay, Wanda?
It is okay with us on our end. And so again,